I had the biggest surprise on my 30th birthday last year when my best friend Izzy told me we'd be going to one of my bucket list destinations, the incredible Norwegian Fjords. We cruised for 7 nights on the P&O Iona in May 2025 and the whole experience was incredible. First up you'll see the vlog, and then at the end I sit down to share some tips and advice I hope will be helpful to others. If you're new here, hi, my name is Pippa. I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user with a chronic illness, and of course I don't represent every disabled person's thoughts and experiences, but I really hope you enjoy coming along with us. This is not my best look ever, but it's a few days before we go and I'm feeling a bit on edge about it all. I'm really looking forward to it, don't get me wrong. I've been so excited for this for such a long time, but I've had quite a rough few weeks of symptoms. I've really not been at my best. I've really been struggling the past few weeks. Primarily I'm worrying about the 5-hour coach journey to get down to Southampton. I think I'm going to find that quite hard. And then I'm worried about being on the cruise ship, which is quite a big component of a cruise holiday. Yeah, I'm worried about the motion and I'm worried about how that's going to impact my symptoms, especially at the minute. But I'm just trying to remind myself that when I last went on a cruise a few years ago, I was really not very well and I really struggled, but I still managed to have a good time and I'm still glad that I went. I don't regret going. So I'm just really holding on to that at the minute. But yeah, it's like I can't just brush these things away. I've got to manage my mindset. You always go into things like this knowing that it is going to be hard. That's kind of the way you have to go into things when you're dealing with a chronic illness. I'm certain it'll all be worth it. And yes, we're going to do the best we can with what we have and it's going to be good. Good morning, it's travel day today. Shortly we're going to be setting off from a pickup point nearest Sheffield and we're going to be travelling down to Southampton on the coach. Also, just briefly, I don't think I've mentioned this on YouTube, I'm trying to curly girl my hair. I've had a whole journey with this and I'm not loving how it's looking at the minute, but I've committed to it and I'm trusting the process. Let's go on holiday. Been in the room, what, 2 minutes?
Biscuits.
First priority. Tea.
The coffee.
Nice.
Did you bring any tea with you?
Yeah, I did, I can't lie. We're in our room. I don't think I've actually talked yet, but we're in our lovely twin room. This is on deck 12 and we have our little balcony outside. Do you know what? It's not that much of a squeeze. It's
magnetic.
Just good for you.
Look.
Take 2. Yay! We've been here all of 3 minutes. I've already got trapped in the door. We're having problems with physics. But yes, it's very nice. It's very pretty. We'll have plenty of opportunities to show you the balcony when there's a nicer view outside. But yes, so obviously we're at the Southampton docks at the minute, but we've got 2 lovely seats out there. I should say as well that this... Oh, hello.
Good afternoon, it's the Officer Watch speaking from the bridge. Please be advised that owner is taking on LNG from a vessel located on the starboard side of the ship.
What's she seen?
Paper every day.
Every day? Oh, it's the best. Dude, it's the best thing ever. We can plan our day with our little pen and we can circle what we want to do. But yes, this is not the accessible cabin. I will explain more about that at the end of the video because that's a whole other palaver. But yes, we've got twin beds. We've got a folding wheelchair that squeezes in, but because that's the wardrobe there, we are going to have to move that around a little bit, but that's fine. And yeah, very beautiful, very comfy. I'll show you the bathroom. Yeah, so like I said, not an accessible room, so there is a little step in, but it's nice and modern. I was expecting a bath, but that's fine. We can make it work because I can sit on the floor. If I knew it was a shower, I would have maybe sorted a shower seat, but it's fine, it's all good. And look how nicely decorated it is. Hey! We are unpacked. We think we're about to sail away, so we're going to have a wander and an explore around the ship. I've had a provisional lay down. What we buffering?
So we think that there's a sail away party, so we're going to try and see what that's about. And then we're going to have a wander around, we're going to have some food.
Forgot to mention as well, I thought I would just document this as it happens in real time. We had a really, really great check-in experience. Everyone was so lovely. We just had one guy who, how would you even explain it? Looked at you, and I can't do words.
Looked at Pippa, looked at me, and then asked me, how old is the young lady?
He went to Izzy, how old is the young lady? Because I was in my wheelchair.
I said 30.
So that's a new one. We've never had that before. Just the tender age of 30.
Yes. My child, who is a year older than me.
Yes, we genuinely think that he thought that you were my parent.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's awful for both of us, really, but I think it's worse for me.
It's a new one off the bingo card.
Yeah.
We can safely say we've never had that one before, so there's a first time for everything.
I'm
Anyway.
gonna start wearing more eye cream.
And I need to start dressing my age. Oh no! This is unbelievable. Look at all the ships in the distance. It's unreal.
Oh my god.
Where are we going?
The Horizon Restaurant.
Why are we going?
Water.
Why else are we going?
Why?
Yeah. We're going for a
Water.
little snacky snack, aren't
Oh,
we?
I thought we would just go for hydration. Hydration and water.
Hello from today's sea day. Dare I say it, I'm actually doing a lot more okay than I thought I would be. I don't know whether it's the combination of the bigger ship or the medication or the fact that I'm just being really careful, but no matter what it is, I am so incredibly grateful for it. So I've come back and just had my first rest of the day, and then we're going to go and get some lunch, and then today I've managed to get an appointment in the hair salon because I can't deal with this. I asked them if they could curly girl it for me, and they said they can. So while that is going to cost me, I think because we've got the shower and I was expecting a bath, I would really struggle to stand in the shower and wash my hair and curly girl it and still get through the rest of the day. That would be a struggle for me. So in my head, it kind of made more sense to just this one time go and let somebody else deal with the hair, and then that's one less thing that I have to spend the energy on, especially because we've got a fair few port days coming up, which I cannot wait for. After the hair appointment, we're heading to a game show. We're going to watch a game show on the ship, then we'll come back, I'll have another rest, and then we'll start getting ready for formal night, gala night this evening. Forgot to say as well, when I first woke up this morning, I cannot for the life of me fathom why or how this has happened, but I had the most horrific bout of hay fever. The hay fever this season has seemed to be so bad and much worse than I've personally had it, much worse than I've had it since I was a child. But oh my gosh, yeah, I was in a right old state with the hay fever this morning, and I was looking around thinking, we are literally in the middle of the ocean. Where is the pollen? Why Why? It makes no sense to me. Luckily it's calmed down a bit. I've medicated and it's calmed down a bit now, but yeah, that was not fun. Look, I feel a bit better now. Small might be having a bit of a crisis.
No, we're having a lovely time.
Yes, we
No
are.
crisis.
No crises around here, so we're ready for formal night. We thought we'd come on the balcony and at least attempt to get some like photo or video evidence of this because we're about to go and eat a 5-course meal. So this is that. Yay! On we go.
On we go.
You know my heart goes crazy when your tender lips touch mine. Let's explore our love. We'll leave the world behind. Can you feel me, baby? Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Good morning. We have just docked up in Stavanger, which is the first port on our cruise. It looks absolutely beautiful outside already and the weather is really good as well, which makes me so happy. Today is actually World ME Day on the day that I'm filming this, and I can confirm I am very aware of ME today. I'm not feeling brilliant and it's nobody's fault but my own. I don't regret it because we had a really good day and a really good night yesterday, but I am definitely on the struggle bus today. But we are going to have a wander around Stavanger. We're going to look at all the pretty houses and all the pretty colours. We've got no set plans, so we're going to see how we go. But before that, I'm trying not to get my hopes up because I've done this before, but I have heard on the grapevine that there are dairy-free pancakes on the agenda for me today for breakfast, and I've been thinking about them pretty much all night. I'll explain at the end of the video when I do my usual little talk through how it all works with the allergies and stuff if this is something that you've not done before. But yeah, I pre-ordered my breakfast last night and he basically just kept offering food. So yes, very especially excited for breakfast today, and following that just hopefully a really lovely day in this very pretty place. We're in Norway! We had excellent pancakes, which I got too self-conscious to film. And now the day is our oyster. Woohoo! I'm really tempted to title this vlog just "Where is the pollen?" because that is all I've said pretty much the entire time we've been here. I don't know how I've had hay fever this bad, like literally at sea. And like, bear in mind as well, I have prescription antihistamines, I have over-the-counter antihistamines, I'm very antihistamined up, and yet I'm still having...
She's conscious at this point.
Oh, I mean, just in general, yeah. Where is the pollen?
Where is the pollen?
Where is it?
Where is it?
Ladies and boys and girls, welcome to another... I can't do the voice. Welcome to another episode.
Another episode of Pippa Doesn't Die in Other Countries.
Thank you. This shall be the title of this series. Accessibility in Stavanger, I think it was pretty decent. Like any place, few tricky bits, few bits that were easier. It was definitely worth persevering with. It was such a gorgeous place. It was quite cobbly, but you would find areas where there were smoother bits of pavement, and it seemed like there'd been a bit of deliberate effort put into that.
The drop curb situation I thought was excellent. Much better than the UK.
Really? I thought we had a couple of tricky ones.
No, we didn't really... There wasn't much difficulty getting from A to B. Admittedly, we didn't know where A was and where B was.
The waterside area in particular was really easy to get around. It was only like a 5 to 10-ish minute walk into like the main bit, into the city centre. You'll find like the Rainbow Street with all the rainbow houses there. Loads of nice places to sit down and have a drink. Loads of nice places to sit down in general actually. So even if you're not using mobility aids, you could pretty much like bench hop your way around, I think. How was it for you as a pusher? Just pulled a very attractive face. Yeah, be honest, because there'll be people watching this who are going to be the wheelchair pusher.
Okay, as a pusher...
You sure you don't want to be in it? Be a voice? Okay.
Okay. As a pusher, there were a lot of hills and cobbles sort of combined do make for slightly challenging pushing. It wasn't like, oh my god, this was absolutely awful, we're never going to go here again.
Yeah.
Sort of pushing. It was just like, yeah.
But you're
challenging,
like...
bit tricky if you find pushing challenging point blank, then you're gonna find
it'll be tricky.
Yeah.
And Izzy's quite young and healthy.
ish.
It's saved her some money on her gym membership this month, pushing me up the hills.
So even if you didn't want to go to like the sort of like really steep hilly bits, I think there's plenty to do around like the harbour side, which is all flat.
Yeah, and that was really nice in itself.
Yeah.
So even if you're just nipping off for a little look around, loads of shops, loads of things to do just around that bit without venturing into all the big
if you're
bits.
a power toe user, Cobbled Street,
Yes.
Rainbow Street might be a bit.
Oh no, I think it's doable.
Do you reckon?
I reckon it's doable with a good power chair.
Yeah.
But yes, we have set off, and our next stop will be tomorrow morning, and that is Alesund. What we're doing tonight, we are a show, a meal, gonna have a nice evening. See you when I see you. Good morning from Alesund. Really hope I'm saying that right. Our plans for today, I've got a really like rubbish hay fever throat again. But our plans for today, originally we really wanted to do the troll stuff. We really wanted to do the troll tour, go and see like the troll cars. Like that's the thing that this area, I believe, is arguably like most known for. So, you know, we really just wanted to go and pay our respects to our ancestors, the troll people. But lots of the stuff was sold out like weeks in advance, and also the main road for the troll bit, the troll road, is shut for like a couple of weeks over the time that we're here. So that's really sad, and we were a bit stuck for what we wanted to do today, but in the end we decided to get tickets for the hop on hop off bus. There is a viewpoint that we're really keen to go for because all of the staff on board have told us about this viewpoint, so we're definitely going to do that. but quite flexible in terms of everything else. We'll just see how we go. Oh my goodness, last night it was about 10:30 and we were on the balcony outside. It stayed light for a really long time, and an announcement from the captain came on, and we were like, oh my god, what's happened? But he was like, if you're on the right side of the ship, we've had some reportings of whales in sight. So there was a pod of whales and we could see them really clearly. Like, they were far away, don't get me wrong, but we could see this pod of whales and they were almost like swimming alongside the cruise ship, which was so cool and so special to be able to see that. It was quite funny actually, like we were already out on the balcony, but as soon as that announcement was made, you just saw the people congregate to that side of the ship to see if they could see it for themselves. But yeah, that was absolutely amazing. Like, I'm so glad we got to see that. It was very, very cool. Do you know what a really fun game to play is when you're going down a steep decline with gravel?
With the sea at the end.
With the sea at the end. Perfect time for Izzy to play her favourite game of Bye Pippa! Like your Bye Pippa! Stop it! That's not my idea of a good time. Hello, we've had what I like to call a cinematic gap in the vlog since we last spoke, but yes, we've had a bit of a struggle today. So while it's all fresh in my mind, I'm gonna show you perhaps what not to do while in Alesund if you're a wheelchair user or travelling with somebody who uses mobility aids. So I still stand by the fact that the tour bus is a really good idea. Like, you get to see a lot more of the place you're visiting, even if you can't necessarily walk that far. But we got on at the cruise terminal and we stopped off at the museum, and that was really, really lovely. Also very gravelly and very difficult to get around, but even if you stay on the bottom, there's a lot of good stuff to see there. Then we carried on up here, and this was the point where you could get off and do what's supposed to be a really lovely scenic walk. Don't do this if you're a wheelchair user. Don't do it.
Do it if you've got an absolutely fantastic powered wheelchair.
You look nice.
Thank you.
Yes, if you've got an absolute beast of a wheelchair, you might be fine, but it's very uphill, very gravelly. You can just about get to the first photo stop, but if you do it, turn around and go back to the bus stop here.
Sorry.
Don't.
Sorry.
I like.
Izzy's wrists are still hurting.
Izzy's been suffering today. I like to be an inspirational travel vlogger. Don't do this.
I'm not hench, but like, I'm young and...
Yeah, she's young and fit and she goes to the gym.
Enthusiastic, and if you're not young and enthusiastic about these things, you'd have an awful time.
Yeah, honestly.
To do that.
It was bad.
Yeah.
So, yes, you can get to this point and it's nice enough, but do not try and do this. And that's around here is the point where you've probably heard about it if you've researched this place, but it's the really cool viewpoint where you walk up 400 steps, which obviously we did not do. Nothing against the tour bus. I still think the hop on hop off bus is a really good idea. You can get lots of people using mobility aids on it at the same time, which is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, my best advice, even though it's absolutely beautiful and I'm really glad that we did what we could, yeah, best to avoid this bit. Neither of us were thriving when we got back earlier. After some toing and froing about what the best course of action would be, I was in pain, so I made the executive decision to go to the hot tub, which I don't regret, and I maintain that was the right decision. So got deposited at the hot tub, came back to the room, had my rest, have had a bit of a funny reaction. But I'm fine now. Nothing serious, nothing to worry about.
You always say, "Oh, I've had a reaction to something." Oh, it's fine.
Not like a food, not like an allergic reaction, just another one of my weird things. And not hay fever. It was not a where is the pollen today. It was a, I believe, went from hot to cold too quickly reaction. Yeah. Anyway, we've had our rest. I've had my rest, I should say. And
I've had my rest.
oh, good, you've had some chill out time. Izzy's had her wine and a book, so you're like suitably recharged.
7 chapters of my book.
Beautiful. And the plans for this evening are we are going to go to a new bar called Anderson's.
We're going to go to the Crow's Nest.
The Crow's Nest. We're going to have a drink. We're going to see the show, which is like, there's like a rock theme everywhere on board, so we think it's a tribute show. And then we're going to go and see whatever is happening in the Sky Dome. They're setting up something which apparently looks amazing, so we're going to go and have a look at that. And we need to be careful tonight because we've got a really lovely day planned tomorrow as well.
Or we could just not be careful and overdose on caffeine tomorrow and call it a day.
No, because tomorrow is the day I've been most looking forward to.
Okay.
Good morning, we are in Olden today, which is one of the days I've been especially looking forward to on this trip. We are doing an actual excursion today. We are going on the Loen Skylift, Loen, and you can do this as an excursion through P&O, but we are doing it through a company called Olden Adventure because it's virtually the same thing and it's £40 cheaper. So there we go. Oh no, I just did a Martin Lewis point. Being disabled Martin Lewis.
But being disabled Martin Lewis.
He's quaking. I think that's going to be really, really, really good today. We opened the blinds when we got up this morning and we were like, oh my gosh, because we are in the fjords. We are properly in the fjords now. I'll show you the view before we go. I am feeling quite bad today, but that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but it is. I just took a drink of water. You missed this. I took a drink of water and completely missed my mouth.
Oh God.
Which gives you a good idea of where we are about today. So what could be better than going up a mountain in a sky lift? I'm also a tiny bit scared of heights as well, which you may have realised if you've watched my previous vlogs. But I really, really want to do this and I think it's going to be really good and 100% worth it. So go and get some brekkie and then off we go. But look at this. Gorgeous, 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 and there's even snow-capped mountains over there. Just absolutely incredible. I'm starting to be able to feel my limbs again.
You're not shaking?
No, I was a little bit, but I stopped now. Izzy had a coffee and looked at me and said, I think I can hear colours now.
It was incredibly strong.
Olden has been a very, very good port to us. We've had a very good time today. The sky lift was scary, but it was everything I hoped it would be. Like, I don't think the pictures and videos will do justice to just how gorgeous it was when you got up there. It was just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And it was actually quite accessible at the top as well. There were lots of like smooth pathways, so it was quite easy to get around. Obviously there were bits that weren't doable in a wheelchair, and we were watching people scrambling up to the top and doing all of these different walks. But there is a lot to see, and you can get to lots of different viewpoints, so it really feels like it's worth the visit. It's like worth the effort of going up there.
I'm interrupting the vlog.
That's okay. Actually, vlog, do you want to see me ruin Izzy's day in real time?
Why?
I need you to do my button up, please.
No! No!
It's Lily's favourite task.
No! No!
It's the worst task. This button is so stupid.
No!
We're also prioritising warmth right now because we are going to go and sit outside and watch the cruise by. We're choosing to do this instead of the evening entertainment tonight. We want to see all the... No way!
She's practiced.
She's
dexterous.
She's only gone and... Alright, don't rub it in. She's only gone and smashed it. That was
Gone and smashed it.
that was a lot less dramatic than the performance we had the other day, wasn't it?
Probably over-exaggerated. No, it's hard with obnoxiously long
Yeah.
nails.
Anything you want to say about Olden?
Probably not anything that you've not already said.
Okay.
But it's beautiful and surprisingly accessible.
Yeah, exactly what I've just said, yeah.
And I could probably spend a week here.
Yes, it was really, really sad to leave. Neither of us wanted to come down off the mountain. Neither one of us wants to sail away from this place. This is by far my favourite port so far.
Easily.
It's just...
It'll be very surprising if anything actually manages to top this.
I agree. It was just beyond beautiful. And like the sky lift, like obviously if you're not good with heights, it is high, it's scary.
But it's worth it.
I agree it's worth it, but I also don't want to minimise that I found that quite scary. I don't know if you could tell. Also, if you find it difficult being outside for longer periods of time, because it was very cold up there, so make sure you've packed like suitable warm clothing, even if you think you don't going to need it. Even if you think you don't, I can't do work.
Even if you think you don't need it.
What she said. I'm starting to struggle a bit now, and today of all days I decided I would try and self-propel for a little bit, which I've not tried for at least 10 years. Can confirm it's still not a realistic option for me. What a great day to try that again for the first time. Yeah, we're going to enjoy our lovely evening cruise by. We're going to get some food, and then I think we'll see where the evening takes us from there. But yes, absolutely loved today so far. Olden is truly one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited, and I feel very, very lucky to have been able to see it with my own eyes.
Now, despite some great weather so far this cruise, unfortunately tomorrow in Haugesund we are expecting some very strong winds, and as such, rather than cancel the call entirely, I have had to adjust the timings for tomorrow around the forecasted weather conditions.
Okay, I don't know how much of that you got from the last clip, but the announcement just came on in our cabin saying they've slightly adjusted the schedule because there are high winds forecast. So we've got a shorter day there now, which is absolutely fine. I'm glad that we're getting to go at all. I am a little bit nervous about the fact that strong winds have been mentioned, given that the next day is a sea day before we end up back in Southampton. I've been really, really, really lucky with not struggling with motion sickness anywhere near as badly as I did last time. So I just really, really hope that continues for the last little bit. Also, this is compromising friendship. Oh, here she comes, flopping away.
I wonder who could it be?
Thank you.
In how much pain are we?
No, it's all good. I was just talking about how this is compromising friendship. all the sensible people are sat inside, but we are sat outside, and that's fine because it's lovely.
This is so much better because we're experiencing it.
Yes.
We're in the fresh air, we can smell it, we can see everything with an blocked view,
Yes.
which is better.
Yes.
We will never be here again in our lives.
Oh, don't say that. That makes me really sad because I want to come back here.
We will not be here again for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, fair. Oh. So anyway, this is the situation. We're on a sunbed. I've got about 5 layers on under my evening outfit. I've got the bundle bean on, which I'm so incredibly glad that I brought now. And I can't deny that this view is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm really looking forward to this sail by. Good morning. You might not hear as much from me today. 1, because I'm not feeling brilliant, and 2, because I'm going to film today for Instagram, I think. So do something short form instead. But we are in the beautiful Haugesund, I believe is the correct way to say it now. It's a lovely calm day so far, and the winds aren't going to start until later. So we're going to go and get some brekkie, and then no major plans today. Probably just have a little wander around the town, and we'll see where the day takes us. This is the real tourist attraction. Okay, this is giving me flashbacks of what I used to look like when I was younger, when I was doing all the ballet. Oh no. We've given up on curly girl for the rest of the week. I don't know if you could tell. I don't have the energy nor the patience to be carrying on with that. But it is our second to last night. We've been to Haugesund today, and I think it's safe to say that it was neither of our most favourite ports on this trip. It was also not the best destination to visit as a wheelchair user. It was very, very hard work, and I say that on behalf of Izzy. Yeah, it was a struggle. So my best tip if you are coming here is to not attempt to walk into town yourself. Make sure you either get on the shuttle bus or the little land train and look into whether you need to book these things in advance. We managed to get on the shuttle bus on the way home, but that's not common practice. The bus driver was very, very kind and let us on because he was so in shock that Izzy had managed to push the wheelchair as far as she did over quite a steep incline of a bridge. Definitely not for the faint-hearted, and if we hadn't have been able to get a lift back, I think we would have ended up getting a taxi because it was really, really hard work, so just be aware of that. Originally, we did kind of discuss the idea of getting on a ferry and going to one of the local islands. It's spelled Rover, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce it. But with this being a shorter port day, we thought we're not going to do anything too risky, just to make sure that we're back on board. I was just telling them that Haugesund was not easy as a wheelchair user.
No.
Not for the faint-hearted. And if you found it
or
difficult,
the pusher.
that's what I mean, the pusher.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was one thing for me, it was a whole other thing for you. So yeah, for the wheelchair pusher.
Yeah, challenging.
We're going to go and see Mandy, what's her name?
Mandy Muden.
Mandy Muden again. We really enjoyed her show the other night, and she's got another one tonight. So we're going to see Mandy, we're going to eat some nice food, and then to the silent disco. We're going back to the silent disco. I was going to say we think there's a silent disco, but we know there's a silent disco, so really looking forward to that as well. Got a bit carried away at the silent disco again, didn't I? So the start of the final sea day was not a good time for me. Definitely felt really poorly. Izzy was tired out with all the hard work she had to do with pushing me around. But we took the day really slowly. I started packing up really carefully to pace my limited energy. And then I think this was one of the many times when the delirium hit a little bit. I don't even know what you're saying. Can I have a translation, please?
Herbal.
Herbal?
Yeah.
Like the tea?
Like the tea.
Do it again. Oh. I thought you were saying like Yvonne of the Yukon.
Who's Yvonne?
Did you not watch Yvonne of the Yukon when you were little? On CBBC? Defrosted for you and for me?
No.
Oh, you missed out.
I don't think so anyway.
I don't think I've actually spoken to the vlog yet today, apart from that little interlude there in the corridor. I think I'm finally running out of battery. Well, I've been running out of battery the whole way through, but today it was like, yes, we are approaching crisis point now. So in a way, it's a good thing that this is the last full day, but at the same time, I'm just really, really sad to leave. As wonderful as it's all been, and the fact that we've visited a country that I've really, really wanted to visit for such a long time, I think one of the biggest little victories for me from this trip is that I've been on a cruise and I've not struggled with motion sickness or vertigo the way that I did last time. I can't put into words how much of a relief that is, because in a way it feels like it's put cruising back on the table for me as a realistic travel option, which is incredibly exciting. So I'm just sat here ready to go for my rest, and as rubbish as it is that rest in condition management still has to be a part of things, I just feel really, really lucky right now. Yeah, feeling really, really grateful. So if you were just watching for the vlog this time, I really hope you enjoyed coming away with us as we experienced this beautiful, beautiful country. But if you're maybe interested in planning a similar trip like this for yourself one day, keep on watching and let's have a chat about things like access, mobility aids, allergies, chronic illness, all fun stuff like that, and let me share my tips and tricks that might help you to plan your own little adventure. I'm very much still in recovery mode after this trip. I've kind of crawled out of it a little bit to record this video, but yes, I'm definitely paying the price for it now, but I can confirm it was totally, totally worth it. Just quickly as well, I wanted to say a massive thank you to Lazy Jacks, who really kindly sent me some clothing, and the timing was perfect just ahead of this trip. So the colourful jumpers and sweatshirts that you might have seen me wearing throughout this vlog, and also this really lovely long sleeve t-shirt as well, they are all from Lazy Jacks, and there will be a link to them in the description. So you know the drill by now, you've seen the vlog, and now I'm going to share some of my tips and tricks for anybody planning a similar trip of their own. First up, let's talk about mobility aids on board. I believe I mentioned this in the vlog, but we weren't able to get an accessible cabin for this holiday. I have never been able to get an accessible cabin on a cruise ship. I think you have to book them really, really far in advance, and there are so few on each cruise ship that they are really hard to get. In a way, that was a big shame, because this would have been the perfect opportunity to take my power chair, especially with departing from Southampton, so I wouldn't have had to have gotten a flight with it. But because we didn't have an accessible room, I wasn't able to take my power chair. And the reason for that is that any kind of electric mobility aids are not allowed in standard cabins. The other barrier we came up against at the time of booking is that P&O now has a policy that there has to be an evac chair on board the cruise ship for every disabled passenger on that cruise ship. So everybody who's on board who uses mobility aids has to have an evac chair assigned to them in case of an emergency, regardless of whether or not that person self-reports that they would actually need one in an emergency. Now, we were told this is a new maritime law, but we have since found out that this isn't the case. To the best of my understanding, it's just that certain cruise ships have made it a requirement, but other cruise lines don't have that same requirement. The fact that P&O requires this meant that it was very difficult to find any availability for us. There were plenty of spaces available on departing cruises, but all of the evac chairs were booked up. So the dates that we actually went on the cruise was the only dates available to us in this part of this year. Everything else was fully booked up, and even at the time there was a bit of hoo-ha about that, because we booked through a travel agency called Igloo, and we were originally told that there was an evac chair available, so we put a deposit down, and then we were contacted by P&O to say that there wasn't an evac chair available, and that we couldn't go on that cruise, aka we couldn't go on any cruise because all of the rest of them were booked up. But thankfully that was resolved, and we were able to go on this one available sailing. So choice didn't really come into it. So if you're in the similar position, make sure that you're book in plenty of time in advance. In case it's helpful to know, we did have a backup option, which was a princess cruise going around similar dates and with a similar itinerary. And as far as I'm aware, Princess don't have this same requirement to have an evac chair on board for every disabled passenger. So that might be a good option, and the only reason we didn't do that in the end is because that one was a bit more expensive, but that is an option that might be worth looking into. So as I mentioned, I couldn't take my own power chair that I use in the UK on this cruise ship because we didn't have an accessible cabin. We were in a standard cabin, and any kind of electric mobility aids are not allowed in standard cabins, and that meant that I would be travelling with my transit wheelchair. Now that was gutting because my own transit wheelchair is an NHS folding transit wheelchair, and like I always say, I'm grateful that I have it, but I've had it for 9 years. It wasn't a great chair to start with, and it doesn't travel very well. It's of the most basic nature. It's not designed for adventures. And because that chair, speaking quite frankly, is quite uncomfortable and quite unreliable, I did make the decision to rent a better manual wheelchair. I thought that would be the next best option if I couldn't take a powered mobility aid. So I contacted my friends at Access Your Life, which is a really brilliant organisation, and through them I was able to rent a better manual chair. The wheelchair I travelled with was therefore an Elite Care chair, yep, and they had put off-road wheels on it, which was great. And originally this chair had a smart drive power attachment added to it, which would have been absolutely incredible because it would have meant I had a manual chair, but I had some ability to drive it myself using a joystick. However, I contacted P&O to see if they would allow this, or even just to allow power assisted wheels, and unfortunately it was a no. You can't have anything like that in a standard cabin. So yeah, unfortunately those things did have to be removed, but even the chair, just as a manual chair, was much better than what it would have been if I'd just been travelling with my own transit wheelchair. In terms of access on and around the cruise ship, I generally had a really good experience. Embarkation at Southampton went fairly smoothly. There were a few fast track points if you do use mobility aids, so that was really good. The staff in general were pretty good as well. They were very respectful. One lady, when she was directing us to the fast track queue, she was saying, "Off you come, you can come in this line because of your chariot," which I absolutely loved. That really made me laugh. Although I will say we did have one unfortunate experience during embarkation, which I also mentioned in the vlog, which was one member of staff addressing Izzy instead of me, as if I can't speak for myself. We genuinely really think that he thought that Izzy was my mum, so that was quite a harrowing experience for both of us. On the cruise ship itself, it generally felt very easy to get around. The corridors felt a bit wider than what I was used to, and the housekeeping staff were always really good at, if they had a trolley, they kept it to one side, so there was always room to get past. As with any cruise ship, the lifts can be a challenge. There are only a few lifts and a lot of passengers. The other passengers on board were either great or terrible. There wasn't really an in-between. So some people would really go out of their way to help us. Some people would offer their space in the lift if they were only going up or down a couple of floors. But other people were actively quite terrible. So we had groups of grown adults where we would be waiting for the lift and we would be next in line, and the lift would come and they would cut in front of us and they would take the space in the lift even though we were there first. So as you can imagine, it's a very frustrating situation when you have no choice but to use the lift. And of course, given my own background, I never like to assume. There may be people with non-visible disabilities who genuinely need to use the lift, and my judgment is not towards them. But of all the people who did this to us, it's not possible that every single one of them had a non-visible disability. Some people are just inconsiderate like that. So you do have to go into that sort of thing with the right mindset. Because I've cruised before and because I've been a wheelchair user for a long time now, I know to expect these things. I think for other people, especially people like Izzy, that can be a very frustrating situation. So you do have to really sort of manage your frustration. Sometimes you really have to dig deep to be patient. Although, of course, I very much wish that we weren't in a situation where we had to dig deep for that patience anyway. Yeah, I wish things were different, and I don't really know what the solution could be other than to perhaps have a lift that was reserved for people who needed it for access purposes only, but to be honest, I can't really see a situation where that would ever happen. In general though, attitudes towards us from the staff and other passengers were largely okay. All of the staff on board were really friendly and welcoming. Other passengers generally the same. There was a bit of staring, but I mainly detected that coming from curiosity rather than hostility. The disembarkation process from the cruise ship to each of the ports was generally okay. You largely do the same as the other passengers, so you go to the disembarkation point, you hand over your card, you get off the ship. But as you're getting off the ship, the staff there will call for assistance, and it was generally the case that 2 people would come and they would steer me in my wheelchair down the ramp, but there'd be one person holding on the back and one person holding on the front, and I always felt really secure. I also found that the ramp on the P&O Iona used for departure was a lot less steep than other ramps I've used in the past, so that definitely felt like an improvement. And then the same happened on your return as well. So when you were going from the port back onto the cruise ship, you'd be carried back up the ramp, you'd go through the security checks like any other passenger. And I wrote down that something I found really, really good is that when the staff did the security checks on me, because they would pat me down rather than put me through the metal detector, they would always ask consent before they patted me down. They would always ask if that was okay. They would always check I was okay. And on a couple of times, some people asked if there was anywhere that was sore or sensitive, which as somebody with a chronic illness, I really appreciated. In terms of our cabin, like I mentioned, we had a standard cabin rather than an accessible one. And the cabin itself was really, really lovely. It was comfortable. It was probably as quiet as it could be, given the nature of the form of travel that we did. There was always going to be noise from other passengers and doors and stuff like that. But as I said in my last cruise video, my best tip is if you have the opportunity to choose a cabin and you're noise sensitive, make sure you choose a cabin that has other cabins above and below it rather than communal areas or entertainment areas, because that way you're not going to get the noise from that filtering through at all hours. It was possible to get a manual folding wheelchair into a standard cabin, but it definitely was a tight squeeze. The doorways were narrow, and because of the layout of the room, it didn't really feel like there was a logical place to put the wheelchair, so we were largely having to like scoot it through to the back of the room near where our balcony was, because if we didn't do that it would be blocking something else. And we spoke to a couple of other people on the ship who use different types of mobility aids, and they said exactly the same thing, so be aware that that might take a little bit of extra effort when you're going in or out. In terms of accessibility at each of the ports, I talked about this in real time in the vlog, but on reflection, as much as I wished I could have had my power chair, just because I much prefer the independence, I much prefer to move around on my own rather than being pushed by somebody else, and I also don't like the effort required from somebody else in order to push me. But if I did have my power chair, there were a lot of things that we would have had to have done differently and that might have had a negative effect as well. So in each of the ports, like anywhere, there would have been attractions and experiences and shops that I wouldn't have been able to get into because there wasn't level access. There were places with steps that I wouldn't have been able to navigate. Sometimes even the terrain and the cobbles. There might have been some cases where this wouldn't have been possible even for my power chair, which is generally quite good on uneven surfaces. And also, I only thought of this afterwards, but the coach transfer that was included in our holiday package through Igloo, the coach down to Southampton to board the cruise ship, that wouldn't have been possible to do in a power chair either. You could only do that coach if you had folding mobility aids that could be placed in the hold. So with all of that in mind, I've been sat here thinking about what the ideal mobility aids setup would have been for this trip, what the absolute ideal would have been, given that a power chair probably wouldn't have been the solution that I thought it would have been. But in the same breath, I know that the manual wheelchair was really hard work for Izzy on this trip. And Izzy is fit and strong and young. And don't get me wrong, there are times when we actively chose to do things that were more difficult. If you're watching this as somebody who is going to be pushed in a manual wheelchair or somebody who's going to be pushing somebody else in a manual wheelchair, there are lots of ways that you will be able to enjoy this trip in a way that isn't as strenuous or as difficult as we found it, because we were admittedly trying to do more ambitious things sometimes. But yeah, I never want to sit here and sugarcoat the fact that it is hard on both of us in these situations, when we really want to make the most of a trip and we don't want to feel like we've missed out, but that takes a real toll. I think on reflection, if circumstances would have allowed it, the best possible setup would have been a manual wheelchair with off-road wheels like the one I've rented and the one I was using, but with the power add-on still attached, so that I would be in a chair that somebody else could push when needed, but I would also have the power assist so I could drive myself sometimes, or I had the electric wheels which would make it easier for the person who was pushing me. I think that would have been the best possible solution for this particular trip and this particular destination. But as I said, electric power assist, electric mobility aids of any kind, or even accessories are not allowed unless you are in an accessible cabin, which meant that that was the barrier for us. But if that wasn't an issue, I think that's the setup that would have been most suited for this kind of trip. Yeah, being in a manual push by somebody else is never my first choice. There were many years when that was the only option for me because of my health, but these days I do really like that. There was no alternative. That was the only way we could experience this trip. And more than anything, I am grateful that I have somebody who was willing and able to push me and to really make the most of this trip and to really commit to trying to make the most out of it for both of us. But at the same time as that gratitude, there is very much the sense of guilt and the sense of being a burden and knowing that your situation made life harder for somebody else. Like, I think it's just realising that both of those things can exist at the same time. And yeah, that can be really difficult. However, if you are watching this and you do know that you will need an accessible room, whether that's for the adaptations or because of the mobility aid that you need to take, as well as booking as early in advance as possible. I've recently discovered some Facebook groups that do like P&O cabins for resale, accessible. It's called something like accessible P&O cabins for resale, and that's where people advertise the cabins that they've had to book really far in advance and for whatever reason they can no longer go. So sometimes you can secure one that way. And then we also met a family on this cruise who were in an accessible cabin, and they had actually gone to a local travel agent and managed to find a really last minute accessible cabin that way. So if that is something you need, please don't be discouraged by my experience, because it may well be possible for you to get what you need, especially if you do have more flexibility over your travel times or the destination you want to go to. And then the final point I wrote down about access is when it comes to disembarkation at the end of the cruise, leave lots and lots of extra time, because the lift situation when everybody's trying to get off with luggage can very much be carnage, as you might imagine. Next, let's talk about allergies. And this trip has confirmed my belief that if you love food and if food is a big part of your holiday experience and you also, like me, have multiple allergies, then I really think that cruising is one of the best ways to go about having a great experience. In case this is the first video of mine you've watched, I'll give you a very brief rundown of my allergy situation. I have one very severe allergy to peanuts, I have a normal allergy to tree nuts, I have intolerance to milk and egg, and I also have a handful of other milder allergies because of a condition I have called oral allergy syndrome. And there are a few other bits and bobs as well. I think there's about 16 allergens in total now, but they all affect me in different degrees of severity. So I've got quite skilled now at juggling and knowing what's doable and what's not. So ahead of every trip I take in a foreign country, I print out a little chef card, which basically states the fact that I have food allergies. On one side I have it in English, and on the other side I have it in the language of the country I'm travelling to. Usually I use a website, which I'll leave linked below in case it's helpful, but this is the first time I've travelled to a country where the language wasn't listed as one of the standard languages on that website. So I ended up using a few different translation pages to translate my allergens into Norwegian. I actually didn't really need the Norwegian side very much because we were largely eating on the cruise ship where the staff spoke English, but it was really helpful just to have this written down because I could hand it to people or I could put it onto the table. And as well as really clearly communicating what my needs were, sometimes it saved a lot of energy and the exertion of having to explain it over and over again. So on our first sit-down meal, I handed this to the waiter, and although I had this with me at every meal following that, it was at that first meal when they took it away and they made a note of my requirements next to my name and they associated that with my cruise card, which in theory meant that my dietary requirements would follow me around the cruise ship anywhere I chose to dine. But through the week, after we tried a couple of different places, we found that it did largely make most sense just to dine in one specific restaurant where the staff knew us. That definitely seemed to streamline the process a little bit as well. So after the first day, the way it would work is that when we went for our evening meal, they would give me the menu for the following day. And I would look at that menu and I would pre-order what I wanted to eat the following day. So going into a meal, I always knew what I was going to have, in theory anyway, because I had brain fog and I would often forget what I'd ordered. So it would sometimes come as a nice surprise, which was great. So I would pre-order breakfast and dinner, the evening meal. And if you were choosing to have a sit-down lunch, you could also pre-order lunch as well. You could always see what was going to be available. And during your evening meal, the head waiter would come over and they would take your order for the following day. And they would just do it for the person who has the allergy. They wouldn't do it for the whole party. Sometimes pre-ordering like this did feel like a bit of a drag. It definitely felt like it took away the spontaneity a little bit, and sometimes I didn't feel like I had the brain power to choose, but I can completely understand why they do that. They do it so they have a heads up and they can make sure that they can adapt the dishes. And for anybody with an allergy, my understanding is that their dish is prepared completely separately. So sometimes that can take a little bit longer as well, but of course the most important thing is that precautions are being taken and you're being served something that is safe for you. Like I said, after we tried a few different places, we realised that it did make sense to stick to one restaurant, so we chose the Pearl restaurant, and the head waiter there, Krishna, was absolutely brilliant. We have already fed back how great he was, because he was not only friendly and accommodating, he really made me feel like nothing was an issue. Not only did he make sure that I was having safe food, he was actively encouraging me to have more and more food. Like, he was offering things that I perhaps wouldn't have felt confident enough to ask for. Especially with breakfast. Breakfast, we got a bit carried away. We actually had to reduce the breakfast order because he just kept suggesting food and just offering the food. And like I mentioned in the vlog, I had the best pancakes I have ever had in my life, and I still think about those pancakes a lot. It's quite funny actually, because on the evening we first met Krishna, when he was taking the pre-order for breakfast, he basically just really casually said, "We can do your dairy-free pancakes if you want." And me and Izzy both went, oh! There was a very audible gasp at the prospect of dairy-free pancakes, because honestly, stuff like that makes me so incredibly happy, and it really goes a long way in reducing the FOMO that can come with having multiple allergies and not being able to eat the same delicious food that other people are eating. When it comes to the buffet, my official line, and the thing I have to say, is if you have severe allergies, it's best not to eat at the buffet. If cross-contamination is an issue for you, then it's best to avoid the buffet altogether. But that said, when you're on a cruise that's stopping in amazing ports, you don't necessarily want to have a sit-down meal 3 times a day, because that can take up a lot of time. So there were occasions when I did eat at the buffet. Please don't think I'm taking that lightly, because even if you do everything in your power to make sure it's safe for you, you can never guarantee. But I was very much doing allergy maths around the buffet, and the really great thing is that on each label for the food at the buffet, they had the allergens written underneath, which was just... that just saves so much time and energy, and I really, really appreciate it when people do that. That said, there was always a vegan section on at the buffet, and every single time I went to that vegan section, there was at least one food in there that wasn't vegan, according to the allergens. So I don't really know what to make of that, and it just reinforces that you should always be careful and always be vigilant. But if this section applies to you, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that anyway. Because we had a fridge in our cabin, I actually took a lot of safe snacks with me. I took Oaty bars, I took chocolate, and I also actually took a carton of oat milk, which might have been overkill, but I knew I would want a nice cup of tea in the cabin in the morning, especially because we had that beautiful balcony. But something else that I really appreciated was that at the buffet, they also had a selection of plant milks out near the hot drinks. So if you did want an alternative milk for your tea or coffee, you could just go and get it and you didn't have to ask for it. Very important stuff for the tea drinkers among us. The next thing I'm going to talk about is motion sickness, but not in the way you might expect. So this is a bit of a tricky one to describe, but bear with me. And if you do need to skip this section, I will put a timestamp on screen. But I will say right off the bat that when I talk about these things, I'm not going to be talking about nausea and vomiting, because those things aren't relevant to my specific situation. I use motion sickness because I can't think of a better term, but when I say that, what I generally mean is that in the past, being on a cruise ship and the movement of being on a cruise ship has made my chronic illness symptoms a lot worse. On the last cruise I went on, if you watched that vlog, you might have seen that I really struggled with dizziness, vertigo, my head felt like a block of concrete, and I was just generally really unwell in a sensation that was quite different from my existing chronic illness symptoms, but also in addition to them. So I definitely wasn't thriving on that cruise ship. I had a really hard time, and although I don't regret it and I'm glad I did it, it was immensely difficult and there were tears. I was really suffering on that cruise ship, and that's one of the reasons why I had a lot of anxiety leading up to this trip. I can't even tell you how lucky I feel to have had a different experience this time. The sensation wasn't like gone altogether, but the experience I had this time was stratospheres better from the experience I had last time. And I think there are a few different reasons for that. And for the sake of comparison as well, I haven't experienced much difference in my chronic illness between then and now. My last cruise was in 2022, and if anything, if I'm being totally honest, my health has actually dipped a little bit since then. So it's not an improvement in my health condition that's responsible for my better experience this time. In terms of logistics, we chose a much bigger cruise ship. This is definitely the biggest cruise ship that I've ever been on, and I've heard anecdotally that bigger cruise ships do tend to feel a lot more stable and you feel the motion a lot less. And we were also given some really good advice to choose a midship cabin, so a cabin that's in the middle of the cruise ship rather than the front or the back, because apparently this is the most stable spot to be in. Before I went, I also went and spoke to a pharmacist who recommended a specific type of medication called Quells. I will put the active ingredient on screen if I can. Now, the general advice for somebody who's worried about motion sickness on a cruise ship is to be prescribed a different type of medication that contains antihistamines. But because I'm already quite an allergic person, I'm actually already on long-term prescription antihistamines and over-the-counter antihistamines, so it wouldn't have been safe for me to be prescribed more antihistamines, which is why I was prescribed this alternative medication instead. But that medication you take every 6 hours during travelling. I do think that medication made a difference. In addition to the medication, I also took my kind patches for motion sickness, and I also used my travel bands. These are both things that I use in and around the UK for travels as well. And I also took some ginger melt tablets from Holland & Barrett, and I took some lemon and ginger tea. Ginger, I'm told, is the magic ingredient for people struggling with nausea, but because this isn't something that affected me, I found that the ginger didn't really seem to help me too much. But if that is something you're worried about, like I said, you can get ginger melts, ginger tablets, lemon and ginger tea. You've got your kettle in your room, so might be helpful to chuck these things in your suitcase if this is something you're worried about. If I'm lucky enough to cruise again in the future, I will definitely be sticking to the bigger cruise ships like the Iona. I will definitely be sticking to a midship cabin. I just view all of these things as a learning experience, but I can't even tell you the sense of relief and gratitude I had that my experience this time was much better than my experience last time. Right, chronic illness. Let's talk about how chronic illness comes into play on cruise ships. And of course, in any conversations like these, it's always important to acknowledge right off the bat that chronic illness affects people so differently. I generally feel like I fall somewhere in the middle, but everybody's situation is unique. So bear in mind that what I'm sharing here is only my own experience, and there's no way that I can speak for everybody. One thing I really loved about the P&O Iona is that there were loads of cosy seating areas all over the ship. Bear in mind that cruise ships inside are always a lot bigger than you might think they're going to be, so things tend to take longer to walk to than you think they will. When it comes to meals, I would argue that the sit-down meals in the restaurants are probably more chronic illness friendly than the buffet. They can take a little bit longer, but it means that you're not having to walk up and down and to find a seat before you can enjoy your food. And the other thing with buffets on cruise ships, I'm trying to say this diplomatically, but I think there's something about cruise ships and British people that can make them a bit feral. Honestly, some of the things I saw at the buffet, it was like a free-for-all. There was a time when I actually got like shoved out of the way by a woman who was on a mission to get the food that she wanted. Yeah, and from a sensory perspective, the buffet area can be quite a bit louder and clattery and people talking and people shouting. It can be a bit harder from a sensory perspective as well. Oh my goodness, if you're like me and you're one of the people who is always cold, the Sky Dome on the P&O Iona was an absolute dream. It was some people's worst nightmare because it was essentially like being in a greenhouse. There was this beautiful dome on the top deck, and that meant that all of the heat kept in. So while it might have been too hot for people, it was the perfect temperature for me. It was absolutely great. I think if I'd had more energy and more time, I would have felt able to swim. It would have been not like warm enough for me to swim, which is such a rarity. And there was one day when I got in the hot tub, and if I'd had more time, I definitely think I would have been in there more. So yeah, quite a niche thing to praise, but if you're always cold, that Sky Dome was the absolute best thing ever. On this holiday, my disability tended to be more visible because I was using a wheelchair most of the time. I was standing up and walking for bits and pieces in between using the wheelchair like I normally do, and there were a couple of occasions where I stood up and walked for a longer period of time. On one of those occasions, I put on my sunflower lanyard to symbolise that I had a non-visible disability, and something really incredible that happened is that when I was in the buffet, I went and got myself a hot drink while stood up, and I couldn't see the oat milk near me, so I asked the staff member walking past where I could find it, and they pointed to the other end of the restaurant, and I said thank you, and I kind of thought mentally to myself, right, I'm going to go without because I can't walk that far. In the time that I thought that, the staff member saw my sunflower lanyard and said, wait there, I'll go and get it for you. And that actually makes me like a little bit emotional talking about it now, because that's just like, little things like that really speak volumes. It meant the world, like, that somebody would recognise that I have a non-visible disability and can't necessarily walk that far, even if I look young and, I was going to say young and healthy, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, thinking about myself on that cruise. But yeah, little gestures like that really can mean a lot. In terms of the entertainment when it comes to chronic illness, I actually found that the entertainment on this ship had a much higher production value than other things I've experienced in the past, which of course was really great. But do bear in mind that shows and productions may have a lot of special effects. There was lots of strobe, lots of flashing. And I would definitely recommend taking your earplugs with you, maybe even your sunglasses as well if you're light sensitive. And also, I would argue that the silent disco is not to be missed. While on the surface that might not seem like a very chronic illness friendly thing to do, it is something that you can do seated. There was lots of seating around the area, and with the headphones you can adjust the volume and turn it down if it's too loud for you. I am a bit of a hypocrite saying that, because on both times we went to the silent disco, both times it was on, I definitely got carried away, I definitely exerted too much energy, and I really felt the consequences of that on the following days. But it is something I really enjoyed, and if you are able to do it, I think that's something not to be missed. I had a really great experience on this holiday. Like any trip, it was full of challenges and full of additional things to navigate because of my disability. But I've learned a lot from this experience, and I always do. From every trip I do, I learn something new that makes it a little bit easier next time, and that's a large part of the reason why I choose to share this sort of information online, in the hope it will be helpful to somebody else. After this trip, I am much more open to cruising again in the future than I was before. After my last experience, I thought it was probably something that I would never do again, but I'm definitely more open to it now, and I feel like I'd be much better able to cope with it now and know how to do the things that would best help me. But one of the reasons this trip felt extra special was not only because it was a surprise from my best friend for my 30th birthday that I genuinely had no idea was coming. I didn't expect it at all. The destination is somewhere that I know for a fact that my dad would have loved to visit. My dad was very lucky to travel a lot throughout his life. He loved to travel. He got to see so many amazing places that he always wanted to see. And this destination, the Norwegian Fjords, I would say was the one destination that he wanted to do and just didn't get the chance to before it was too late. So to be able to go here with my best friend, like, he was in my thoughts the whole way through, because I know without doubt he would have absolutely loved it, and I'm so lucky that I got to experience it for myself. I also will acknowledge again that doing trips like this definitely isn't possible for every person with a chronic illness. So if you are watching this as somebody who is either planning a trip or aspires to do a trip like this in the future, I really hope this information is helpful. But if you're watching this as somebody for whom travel just isn't possible at the minute and it just isn't on the cards, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you being here, and I see you, and I'm just sending all of the love and empathy your way. I'm just incredibly grateful for every opportunity I get to test out whether I can make little adventures like this work for me and figure out how I can try and make them more chronic illness friendly at least. Anyway, if you've got this far, and if you've also cruised with a disability or a chronic illness, I would love to hear any of your own tips or experiences, especially if you are somebody who has managed to book an accessible cabin, or perhaps someone who has a disability that's different from mine. But for now, I will say thank you so much as always for watching. I really appreciate you being here. You can subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.
Can you feel me?